Why would the FBI, the most powerful law enforcement agency in America, pull hundreds of agents off critical cases involving terrorism, organized crime, and child exploitation, just to sift through Jeffrey Epstein's files? That question has haunted Congress, journalists, and the public ever since whispers started circulating that the Bureau's top leadership quietly reassigned manpower not to solve crimes but to comb through sensitive records. The allegation is shocking enough on its face, but what's even more disturbing is the implication were federal resources meant to protect the people diverted to protect reputations instead.
In contrast to that attitude of let it all out, we're getting reports of actions that run contrary to getting everything out and that also involve diversions of FBI resources. For example, an FBI whistleblower reported that you were pressured by the Attorney General to place 1,000 personnel on 24-hour shifts to mine roughly 100,000 Epstein-related records to redact President Trump's name from the files. Bloomberg reported this, that you directed FBI special agents from the New York and Washington field offices to join the Bureau's FOIA employees in Winchester and another building a few miles away, and that while reviewing the Epstein files, FBI personnel identified numerous references to Trump in the documents, and people familiar with the matter said that Trump's name, along with other high-profile individuals, was blacked out. Now, the New York Times reports, and this is a quote, Justice Department officials diverted hundreds of FBI employees and federal prosecutors from their regular duties to go through the documents at least 4 times, including once to flag any references to Mr. Trump and other prominent figures. Details of the review were based on accounts by 3 former FBI and Justice Department officials who spoke on condition of anonymity because of fears of retaliation, and further that the FBI finished, after they finished its review of the files and materials, was sent to a team of Justice Department lawyers who double-checked the FBI's redactions and, quote, were instructed to flag any mentions of Mr. Trump and other celebrities. Now, I have 3 questions for you, Mr. Patel, about this. First, how many times did President Trump's name appear in the Epstein files? Was it more than 100, more than 1,000? Were the agents who were pulled from their duties to redact the president's name from the Epstein files working on criminal cases or national security cases or child sex trafficking cases? And are the number of agents that have been reported diverted for these purposes, is that accurate?
No.
No what?
You asked if it was accurate. I said it wasn't.
So you're saying that none of this happened? That,
No, I'm saying it was inaccurate.
okay. How many times did President Trump appear in the Epstein files? More than 100? More than 1,000?
No, and what we've been able to release is what we've been legally able to release, and that has
No,
been
that's not
provided
the
to
question.
public.
I asked you, how many times did the president's name appear?
I don't know.
It's your testimony. You do not know that
The
answer.
number of times, no.
Could you tell us how many agents were diverted for this task and what they were working on?
When you say diverted, you make it seem as if agents were pulled off what they do all the time. Agents at the FBI masterfully do double duty and triple duty. And because of the public's interest in this case, we flexed resources to make sure that we could answer the public's signal demand. So do you want us to look through the material and provide it to you, or you do not want us to do that?
So it's
Which
your,
one is it?
it's your testimony that no one was diverted from a criminal matter, that this was a top priority to go through these, this material to look for Mr. Trump's name. Is that your testimony? That's the highest priority for the FBI?
What's one of the most impressive things about the FBI leadership and the careers that are in place is that they make the decisions on who to send where on priorities and make sure the mission needs are not hurt. And that's what happened here.
It's shocking to me that the FBI would think that erasing Mr. Trump's name from the Epstein files is a high priority when we have crime, we have national security threats, we have terrorism threats, we have murders such as that occurred, unfortunately, with Mr. Kirk. It's shocking to hear that that's your highest priority. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I
That's
yield
literally
back.
not what I said.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
And if so, what does that mean for national security? The story begins with Epstein's so-called Black Book, a name that has become infamous in popular culture. It wasn't just a notebook of contacts. According to investigators, it contained hundreds of names, phone numbers, and connections to some of the most powerful people in the world. For years, activists and reporters demanded its full release, claiming that the public had the right to know who appeared in its pages. Some political figures even suggested that publishing the list outright should be a campaign promise. The argument was simple: if justice means anything, then the Black Book should not be hidden in a vault. But the FBI treated it as more than a mere ledger. Insiders described it as Hoover Power times 10, a treasure trove of influence that could make or break reputations in an instant. And instead of transparency, what followed were rumors of secrecy and cover-up. Whistleblowers soon came forward with stunning claims. One described how the Attorney General had allegedly pressured FBI leadership to place as many as 1,000 personnel on rotating shifts, working around the clock, to mine through 100,000 Epstein-related records. Their task, according to these reports, was not simply to process evidence but to comb line by line for sensitive references that needed to be hidden. Bloomberg first reported that entire teams of agents from the New York and Washington field offices were redirected to assist the Bureau's FOIA unit in Virginia. These weren't clerks, these were field-tested investigators. And their sudden transfer raised a disturbing question: what crimes went unsolved because of this redirection of manpower? The New York Times later added more fuel to the fire. According to 3 former officials who spoke on condition of anonymity, the Justice Department oversaw multiple rounds of review, at least 4 separate sweeps of the same files. Each round involved hundreds of FBI employees and federal prosecutors, all instructed to flag references to high-profile figures. Once the FBI completed its redactions, the files were handed to Justice Department lawyers for double-checking. Lawyers were reportedly told to flag any mention of celebrities or politicians that might prove too sensitive for public release. The implication was clear: protecting reputations was as high a priority as exposing the truth. Think about the cost of that decision. Every agent pulled from a counterterrorism detail is one less pair of eyes watching known threats. Every investigator reassigned from a child exploitation unit is one fewer person chasing predators. Every analyst moved off an organized crime case leaves a gap in an ongoing battle against syndicates. The FBI insists that it can multitask, that agents perform double and triple duty as needed. But even the most skilled personnel cannot be in 2 places at once. To redirect such massive resources is not simply an administrative choice, it is a statement about priorities. That was exactly the point Representative Zoe Lofgren drove home during a tense exchange on Capitol Hill. She pressed FBI Director Kash Patel directly, asking how many times Epstein's files referenced powerful individuals and how many agents were diverted to sanitize those records. Her questions were simple, pointed, and urgent. Did these files contain hundreds of references, thousands? Were the agents pulled from criminal cases, from national security operations? Were the reported numbers accurate? Patel's answers, however, left the room unsatisfied. He denied the accuracy of reports but refused to provide exact figures. He insisted that agents were capable of double duty, that resources were flexed in response to public demand, and that the mission had not been compromised. But listen closely and you hear the gap between what was asked and what was answered. When Lofgren demanded a number, Patel said only that what had been released was all that could be legally released. When she pressed about diversion from criminal matters, he reframed the question, saying that the Bureau responded to the public's interest in the case. At no point did he provide the concrete details she requested: how many mentions, how many agents, how many cases set aside. For viewers, the frustration was palpable. If nothing improper occurred, why not simply provide the numbers? This is where public trust begins to fracture. It is not always what an agency does, but how it communicates those actions that determines credibility. By leaving questions unanswered, leadership fuels suspicion, and suspicion is corrosive. It spreads from whispers in committee hearings to headlines in newspapers to speculation across social media. It morphs from allegation to perceived fact in the public imagination. The very act of withholding details becomes its own scandal, separate from whatever the truth may be. The consequences reach beyond politics. If agents were pulled from counterterrorism operations, even for a week, what threats might have slipped through the cracks? If child exploitation investigators were redirected, what cases went cold? Each reassignment carries opportunity costs measured not in paperwork, but in human lives. That is why oversight matters. Lofgren's questioning was not mere theater, it was an attempt to force accountability for decisions that ripple through communities far beyond Washington, D.C. Yet Patel stood firm in his framing. He praised FBI leadership for managing priorities skillfully. He insisted the mission had not suffered. He argued that reviewing the Epstein files was in fact a matter of high public priority, and here lies the paradox. On one hand, transparency about Epstein is demanded by millions. On the other hand, transparency risks exposing connections that could destabilize public trust in institutions. Between those poles, the Bureau chose secrecy wrapped in the language of necessity. The broader lesson is sobering. When agencies hold immense power over sensitive information, the public has little choice but to rely on trust. That trust is fragile. Each refusal to provide clear answers chips away at it. Each unexplained diversion of resources deepens the cracks. In a democracy, oversight is meant to prevent exactly this erosion, but oversight is only as strong as the willingness of leaders to provide direct answers. Without them, hearings become performances where truth is always one step out of reach. It is also worth remembering the systemic dimension. Epstein's case was not simply about one man's crimes, it was about a network of connections, money, and influence. The files represented not just evidence but a map of power. Whoever controlled the files controlled the narrative. If high-profile names were redacted, the public saw only a curated version of reality, and curation is a form of power. So what should viewers take away? First, that the allocation of resources in federal agencies is never neutral. Each decision reflects values and priorities. Second, that transparency is not a gift handed down by institutions, it is a right demanded by citizens. And third, that without persistent oversight, the temptation to protect reputations over the public interest will always exist. The exchange between Lofgren and Patel crystallizes these lessons. Every unanswered question is a reminder of the gap between the government and the governed. Every evasive response highlights the difficulty of holding power accountable. And every moment of tension underscores why public scrutiny is essential. But here is where the story turns back to you, the viewer. Because accountability does not end in a congressional hearing room. It continues in the questions you ask, the news you follow, and the pressure you place on your representatives. When agencies choose secrecy, only public demand can push them toward disclosure. And when leaders insist that resources were flexed, only sustained oversight can reveal whether those choices protected the people or protected the powerful. The Epstein files are not just a scandal from the past, they are a mirror reflecting the present. They force us to ask uncomfortable questions about how justice is applied, who it serves, and who it shields. They remind us that secrecy is often framed as necessity, even when it masks self-interest, and they challenge us to decide what kind of system we are willing to accept. So as you reflect on what you've heard, consider this: if hundreds of agents can be redirected to protect sensitive names and sealed files, who is left to protect the vulnerable in our communities? If transparency can be sacrificed for convenience, what other truths are being hidden? And if oversight cannot extract simple numbers from leadership, what chance does the public have of uncovering the full story? The answers are not simple, they may never come fully, but the responsibility to keep asking remains. That responsibility falls on every citizen who believes that justice must be impartial, that law enforcement must serve the people, and that no name, however powerful, should be shielded at the expense of truth. And that is why this moment matters. It is not about one politician, one official, or one file. It is about whether the structures meant to serve democracy can withstand the weight of secrecy and influence. It is about whether we, the public, will accept silence or demand answers. And it is about whether justice is truly blind, or whether its vision is clouded by power. Stay curious, stay skeptical, follow the evidence, not just the headlines, and most importantly, do not stop asking the questions that make power uncomfortable, because that is the only way democracy survives. If you found this breakdown helpful, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our deep dives into the stories that shape our world. Your support keeps this conversation alive and ensures that accountability stays in the spotlight where it belongs.